Morning people, excuse the slightly different filming style. I've come up north for Tory party conference and this is a video that I wasn't expecting to make. Because it's been a weird week for the UK media. First it was GB News firing 3 of its biggest names, and now the BBC has come very close to highlighting its own bias around Brexit. And this isn't the first time that the UK press has almost called itself out. We had Beth Rigby a few months ago.
But the elephant in the room to all of this is Brexit. We don't talk about it much. It's almost become a taboo subject. Journalists aren't even allowed to really ask questions about it without feeling like you're somehow attacking Brexit, but it's hurt the economy.
And as you know, I spoke at the National Rejoin March last Saturday with literally thousands of people outside Parliament, and there was crickets from the UK media. But BBC's Newswatch actually highlighted their own failure to cover it properly, but even while calling themselves out, you could still hear the media bias behind them.
First, has Brexit disappeared from the public discourse? For many people, the decision to leave the UK is now history and the country has moved on, but for others, it's still very much a live issue.
Sorry, what is that based on? Because all the polls say the majority of the UK would vote to rejoin the EU, with the YouGov poll saying it's 64 to 36. And Savanta polls show that 57% of the public would want a referendum on rejoining the EU within the next 10 years. So the implication that the majority of the UK thinks Brexit is behind us is simply bullshit. But carry on.
As was reported on Saturday afternoon on the news channel.
Pro-European protesters are marching in central London today. The National Rejoin March is due to culminate with a rally at Parliament Square. They want the prospect of Britain rejoining the European Union back on the political agenda. But that 20 seconds or so was pretty much the limit of BBC television reporting of the National Rejoin March, which did not feature on BBC One's news bulletins. As well as the thousands in the streets of central London on Saturday, hundreds of others then contacted the BBC to complain about what they saw as insufficient coverage of the event. Well, this was the statement issued in response.
Now get a shovel because this is going to be some utter bullshit.
BBC News is unable to cover every march or protest that takes place.
On that day, with thousands and thousands of people marching in the street against the government's main policy, there were precisely 0 tweets about the National Rejoin March on the BBC News Twitter page. Do you know which protest they did cover? A Just Stop Oil protest with 50 people. Now, I'm not saying they shouldn't have covered the Just Stop Oil protest because climate crisis. I'm saying that their rationale, their excuse of we have to choose which protest to prioritise is clearly nonsense.
The decision on which stories to cover are taken on editorial merit, with a number of factors considered, including the day's news agenda.
Basically saying they have to make an editorial choice as to which stories they cover based on what's going on that day. So let's have a look at what did make the cut. Burnley lost 1-0 to Man United. South Africa lost 13-8 to Ireland. Yeah, that feels more important than the fact that Northern Ireland hasn't had a government for over a year because of the Brexit chaos. But now we get to the really hard-hitting stuff. How did Sophie Turner and Joe Jonas's relationship fall apart? Because to hell with the EU and the effect on poverty. That's the union that we all really care about. No, but wait. A man spent an entire year building an R2-D2. Trust the BBC to get right to the heart of the issues that really affect the cost of living crisis with deadly precision. Only Imperial stormtroopers are so precise.
And whether the subject of the march is a particularly newsworthy or topical issue.
Sorry? And whether the subject of the march is a particularly newsworthy or topical issue? What is the name of the manifesto that our current government was elected on? The sheer media fucking gaslighting to pretend that people who want to talk about Brexit are some weird fringe group that's obsessed with a niche topic, as if it's not the basis for our current government. As if our own government's experts haven't said that it's doing more long-term damage to our economy than the goddamn pandemic. And given that the people of the UK are experiencing the sharpest fall in living standards ever recorded, you're telling us that thousands of people marching in the streets to say stop hurting us isn't newsworthy?
We regularly, and will continue to, represent a range of views on the EU and Brexit.
And that right there is the hub of the whole problem. The BBC thinks that balance means 50-50 on every issue. And so because there aren't thousands of people marching in the streets in favour of Brexit right now, and thousands of people do march in the streets every year in opposition to Brexit, if they show us marching against Brexit, they think that wouldn't be balanced. Do you see how unintelligent and outdated our mainstream media is? This is child logic. Everything has to be 50-50 or it's not fair. Reality is not 50-50. If the majority of the UK has turned against Brexit, which all the evidence says that it has, and the news channels refuse to show that, they are lying to us. Full stop. If every economic body is saying that Brexit is hurting the UK, if every medical body is saying that Brexit is hurting the UK, if every industry sector is saying Brexit is hurting the UK, if half the Tory cabinet for some reason is saying that Brexit is hurting the UK, if the population of the UK is saying that Brexit is hurting the UK, it makes zero sense to pretend otherwise in the name of balance. Now I know I shouldn't get annoyed because it's nothing new. If the TV news channels were doing their jobs properly, you wouldn't be watching me right now. You'd be happy getting your news from the TV instead of TikTok or YouTube or Instagram. It's just incredible to see that they know they're being shitty. That's why people like Emily Maitlis jump ship. Anyway, I'll be at Tory Party conference tomorrow. I'm Femi. This has been F Politics, just trying to make sure that politics doesn't F you. Have a great week.